The Free Market Foundation is on a roadshow through the Eastern and Western Cape. We are launching the campaign for Home Rule. We want to encourage ordinary South Africans and also people who are involved in politics and civil society to embrace the idea of federalism and the decentralization of political power. We're meeting with a variety of political leaders on our journey, and I'm delighted to be joined by Bobby Stevenson. He is the leader of the DA in the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, the official opposition in the Eastern Cape. So Bobby, thank you very much for joining us and for the very interesting interview that the meeting that we had with yourself and your colleagues. We also met with Retief Odendaal, the former mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, where we're having this discussion today. Tell us, in terms of the city where we're based now, there's some pretty big challenges, and the powers that are essentially prescribed by our governance framework limit the ability of the city to address some of these problems. You're in the province, but you have an oversight here of what's happening in the city.
Sure, but if I could start right at the top before we get to the bottom, where a lot of change is taking place. I certainly, and the Democratic Alliance certainly, believes in federalist principles. We believe in the devolution of power, that power needs to be devolved to the body that's most capable of exercising that, and that comes back from a long tradition going back in our history to its predecessors, where I can remember in the days of Sales Slubbert, we were called the Progressive Federal Party. So the devolution of power is something that's very healthy for society, not only because it provides checks and balances in a constitutional democracy, but also because it maximizes the ability at people at the lowest level to have power over their own decision-making process. So coming to your point about Nelson Mandela Bay, we have a situation, as we discussed, where service delivery is crumbling. And what one is finding now is what I call a second transition that is taking place in South Africa, where local residents, the business community, are beginning to take initiatives in order to fix the broken municipality in which we live in. So I mentioned that there are formal arrangements like SRA, special rating districts, where the community living in that area agrees to pay an extra amount on their rates bill that's paid over to an authority which is administered by the community in order to fund certain improvements in their area. So, for example, security or cleanliness or lighting. But we're finding now that this is extending outside of a formal arrangement, where the business community has now signed a memorandum of understanding with the business chamber, where they've become involved in a number of activities to fix this municipality, such as securing our substations, because when electricity substations are vandalized and the power goes off, it actually cripples the ability of businesses to operate. We're also seeing initiatives like the Friends of St. George's Park. That's a massive, beautiful park in the center of the city, which has fallen prey to crime, where people are too scared to walk in there, but the surrounding businesses have now come together and they are making that park safe again for the community. And then you also have ordinary citizens getting together in different parts of the metro, where they are cutting the grass, picking up the litter, and also fixing the potholes, because there's a growing realization that the state can no longer supply the services that it should be supplying.
Yeah, and I think the old governance model, or at least the institutions that were formulated during the transition to democracy, as you say, there is a second transition happening, and it's sort of happening by stealth. So just in terms of the province as a whole, in our roadshow, we're going to be focusing more on the Western Cape. But the Eastern Cape, there's some pretty big problems generally. I mean, there's this hangover from these old administrations, the old homelands, which has created a very large and extensive bureaucracy, and also the ANC itself is deliberately driven that bloat. You had some pretty startling figures.
Well, if one's looking at the bloated bureaucracy in the Eastern Cape, 66% of the provincial budget goes towards funding salaries. That leaves very little over for service delivery. And everyone bandies the term service delivery around. But what it actually means in practice is medicines in your hospitals, equipment in your hospitals, enough nurses and doctors, frontline staff, which we don't have in the Eastern Cape. It means that there should be more money for road infrastructure, because roads are the lifeblood of the economy. I always remember that famous expression of, I think it was John F. Kennedy, who said it wasn't our economy that built our roads network. It was our roads network that built our economy. And that's one of the biggest problems the Eastern Cape faces, because we've got a wonderful coastline and the wild coast, but people can't get to it in many places because of the crumbling roads. But at the heart of the Eastern Cape problems lies what I call cadre deployment, where ANC loyalists are put into top positions regardless of their ability to execute the job at hand.
And I think fundamentally there's a breakdown in accountability, that you have this political class that really is siphoning resources away from value creators in the Eastern Cape, and that's very damaging. So maybe just as we conclude, I mean, you mentioned your long political career going back to the Progressive Party days, the Progressive Federal Party. What does federalism mean to you in terms of the ability of individuals in a society to really exercise sovereignty over their lives?
See, what I believe in is human freedom. And the way for human freedom to be maximized is for people to have autonomy over their own lives. The maximum amount of autonomy you can have without interfering with the rights of others. And the structure of government that you need for human freedom to be realized is definitely a federalist structure, because it devolves power to the local level, where people there can maximize the say that they have over their own affairs. And in that way, you get better informed decision making, and you get happy residents.
Well, Bobby Stevenson, thank you very much for listening to us at the Free Market Foundation today, and for engaging in our campaign for Home Rule. We have this booklet which asks forgiveness, not permission, practical steps towards federalism in South Africa. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity.